Hello, this is Erica Norton, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. I'm very excited to have with us today Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She has a law firm that specializes in real estate and family law, and we are very fortunate to have her join us every week. Today, we are going to be talking about the assets that you can and cannot use in a divorce. And I guess there's a lot of confusion around that. Is that right, Nicole?
There shouldn't be a lot of confusion, but there seems to be, so hopefully we can clear it up today.
So, can you trade your children back and forth?
You can, but you might be borderline on that slavery violations or some other crazy things like that that we want to stay away from.
And pets? Are pets part of the assets?
Pets technically are part of the assets, and the issue is we love to fight over them and we love to create different things like parenting agreements for the pets, which we can do. But obviously, you can't divide an asset, i.e., a dog or a cat.
I bet we could do a whole episode on pets in a divorce. But what are some of the assets that we're talking about today?
So, most people understand that they can sell a house and that's fine. What they don't understand is those other assets like the bank accounts, the 401ks, the stocks, the bonds, the IRAs. What do we do with those? And what legitimately can we use those funds to? Because sometimes you can use them, but a lot of times you cannot, and you cannot deplete them or take out a loan on them.
But I bet a lot of people are out there rushing to spend the money before they have to go to court. I mean, does that happen?
They do that quite often, and the reality is there's a reason why attorneys are going to do at least a 3-year look back on all of your income, assets, and liabilities. So you're not getting away with something when you happen to, oh, look, I spent $10,000 and I withdrew it from my 401k and I used it to buy something for myself, and I don't want my ex to know about it, but it's magically withdrawn. The documents aren't going to lie. So at the end of the day, they are going to be disclosed, and it is going to be something that you're going to have to account for. And obviously, if you're going to keep that item that you purchased, it's going to be on your side of the sphere and not on the other parties.
And so, what should you do I mean, there's so many financial surprises in a divorce. Um, and like, what should you do if you find out that uh, things were depleted, some of your accounts were depleted, and you don't know what was the money was spent on, but uh, it's an asset that was there. Obviously, you can see how it was taken out, uh, but can they get the money back?
They probably are not going to be able to get the money back unless it was deposited, it was withdrawn from a 401k and put into an IRA. Okay, great. Apples to apples, right? Or it was withdrawn from a 401k and it was put in your pocket. Well, then we know where it went. It went into a bank account or it went in a mattress or something. But the good thing is we're going to have an accounting. It's going to say it was withdrawn by Sally and it was distributed in a cash form or wire transfer. So we're going to have that information. It was in a check. Okay, great. Now, Sally, where did the money go? If you can't account for it, we're going to assess Sally that $10,000 that she took out, even if she can't disclose where it went.
And that should just go into the calculation when you're trying to split up your assets.
Absolutely.
And then there are forensics accountants when you're not sure if if your spouse's business, maybe they work for themselves, they get cash sometimes, and they could be lying about what they make. So then I wonder if you would like to speak a little bit about the forensics accountant because they're a good part of many of these divorce settlements.
Absolutely. I think forensic accounting is going to come into place in two times. One, you're either going to have a spouse that is self-employed or you're going to have a spouse that works under the table. So it's very similar in nature, and they work under the table. There's no W-2s, there's no 1099s. Where's the money going? And so that makes it a little bit harder because you can't even subpoena their employer because their employer probably isn't going to be truthful about it either, because obviously they're not reporting it to the IRS. So now you've got two people that are doing it. So you really have to have that hands-on look by somebody that does this for a living. And they're going to divulge into everything. They're going to look at all the bank accounts. They're going to see where money's going. They're going to, follow the bouncing ball, if you will, from A to B to C to D to F. And they're going to follow it to make sure we meet all the goals. If something's missing in that, they're going to go, something's missing in this chain. There's $20,000 missing from here. We need to account for that. And that's where I would go back and say, hey, Erica, you're missing $20,000. It was withdrawn on this day and it's nowhere to be found. And I'm probably going to do that in the way of a deposition. So I'm going to depose you and I'm going to have all this information beforehand. And so I'm going to say, so, where did this money go? And where did this money go? And then, so I'm going to ask you very indirectly. Then I'm going to get to that one question that I really want to ask you about that $20,000. But Erica, you didn't put this money where it was supposed to be, did you? And so again, that's how I get to my point that you're not being upfront and you're not being truthful.
It's just like when people know the IRS are going to come after them and they start giving all their things away, right?
Absolutely.
So moving on to some of the other assets, because I mean, all of these assets, we could probably write a book on each one, but moving on to what a lot of people, the first thing people are worried about is like, where am I going to live?
Yeah, and that's something that we understand. Again, there is that automatic civil restraining order in place at the filing of a divorce that says neither of you can alter, convey, sell, destroy, or waste any assets. But okay, I don't have a bank account. My husband's controlled it. He closed the account. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I don't have any funds. But we do have a joint 401k. Okay, well, great. Maybe we have to liquidate that. We'll have to account for it and we'll have to tell the court and we may have to get permission from the court. But at least then we can say, I withdrew $10,000 because I needed first, last, and security. I needed a place to live. I needed to pay my attorney. Those are all things that we can articulate to a court, and the court's going to say, okay, I understand. But, ma'am, it's going to be assessed on your side.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are going from two incomes down to one, and some people have to still support the other household. So it can be tricky, and people get desperate. So, I mean, that is tricky. And so when they are looking at, they look at the house as part of the assets, and that goes with all the bank accounts, the house, probably, I don't know if is expensive jewelry in there, anything of worth?
Anything really over $500 is on that list.
So what are some of the mistakes people make when they assume something is going to be an asset, but it's not?
I don't think they ever have it that way. I think it's always the other way around. It's not an asset. Wait a minute. So your car's not an asset? Well, I don't own it. I don't care. You don't own your house either. So that's where people, I think, get tripped up a lot. Well, I have a car payment. My car is worth $20,000. I have an outstanding loan of $10,000 and I just need a new car. Great. But unless you're getting another car that's the exact same numbers, you're violating the automatic civil restraining order. And more importantly, you should be getting permission of the other side and or the court. And people will go, okay, well, but my car was in a car accident and it's totaled. Okay. And you got insurance money, didn't you? Yes. What'd you do with the insurance money? Well, I went out and bought a car.
Yeah, people don't want to tell the end of the story.
The insurance money is after they already paid off the loan. They really don't. So you have somebody that has a car and they get the proceeds, but as a result of the proceeds, you're purchasing it. So you're using that asset that already paid off the loan that was in your pocket, and now you're wasting it by purchasing something else. So there's a lot of that really you need to talk to your attorney about as you're going along in a divorce.
Yeah, there's a lot. And I feel like this is where people really need an attorney to explain this, to fight for what's right so that things are actually split up evenly. If you don't have an attorney and you just kind of, go in and either the other side has an attorney or maybe they don't, but, things are not always looked at, with the big picture in mind that something could get left out. You have a whole list of assets and questions, and you make sure that we don't miss anything. And that's what I loved about working with you. So if anyone is in the Worcester area that is going to family court for any reason, absolutely get Nicole and her team's perspective because they really do have, great strategies and they can steer you in the right direction. You may even be wasting your time and your money, and they will let you know if you go in one direction and it seems stupid to spend thousands of dollars fighting over a lawnmower, for example. Like, just go buy a new one. You can't win all the battles, right?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, people do kind of think, well, I want to win that one. Well, again, let's pick our battles. And you're right. What is the cost of it? Because at some point, it's not cost effective. But again, we need to know that stuff. It all is an asset, and we just have to figure out what it is we're going to be doing with those assets.
So, what is your favorite strategy when you're looking through? I know that every single one is different, but are there, it seems like there's certain directions that you go in and certain things that you look at in a certain order.
I think from my perspective, it's really about what the client is telling me. I think what they tell me is very telling, and sometimes it's what they're not telling me. So I'll listen to a client and they go, well, what is the bank accounts? Well, I think we might have one here, or I think it might be joined, or I have no idea. So those are the ones that really kind of excite me because that tells me that my client has no clue and I really need to kind of look everything over with fine-tooth comb. And then I have my other clients that sit there and tell me, well, he's really a gambler, or he always wants to, he spends all his money on lottery tickets, or I can't believe he's wasting more money, doing stupid things. And like, he's always one of those people that has to get rich fast. So those are the things that I'm looking for because it's what you're telling me about your spouse that allows me to kind of look at a document and go, oh, let's look at this. And I just go down the list. And I'm looking very particularly for these items. And sometimes it's just a matter of you didn't tell me, but did you notice, Erica, that your ex is going to the liquor store every day and he's spending $45? Unless you're saying, hey, look, yeah, we have parties every night. I'm going to go, what are we doing here? And then where you usually go, yeah, I forgot to tell you. I keep finding nips underneath the couch. And yeah, he has a drinking problem. I'm like, okay, but tell me. And that's really kind of how my clients divulge things to me when I'm looking at the stuff and I'm going, what's that? And I do my research when I have things and I go, I have no idea what that is. And I'll Google search, what is that name? And it pops up because it's really fun. And sometimes it's collection agencies that you didn't know anything about. Sometimes it's old credit card debt. So there's a lot of different things. But that's what I'm looking for is what do those documents say? Or what don't they tell me? What is missing?
And that's really interesting that you say that because there are little sneaky things that people don't realize. If you are using marital funds on, maybe even for years on things that are not kind of approved or known by your spouse, and you've squandered, you know, I don't know, $50,000 on scratch tickets, or you've got some unexplained cash, and you know that where I'm going with this. But you're making all these cash withdrawals. Um, that that's not right. Those are marital funds. And then you have to explain yourself. Where are the receipts for where you spent that money? And if you don't have an explanation, that's going to come out in your settlement, and you may end up having to pay some of that money back.
Right. It's going to be considered marital waste. Again, the courts don't care whether or not you're having an affair. What they do care about is if you're having an affair and you're buying your girlfriend all the jewelry, and you're staying at the luxury hotels, and you're spending all those marital assets on that girlfriend. That's what they care about. And so again, that's what we're looking at, because sometimes it's just, hey, look, I had another get rich scheme and it flopped, and I did more education and I didn't do anything with that education. I just keep wasting money taking all these classes but not doing anything. So again, sometimes they can be explained away, and sometimes both parties know about it and they're like, yeah, that's what he was doing. And other times it's, what are you talking about? So you get both reactions. And again, from my perspective, my job is to ask you and go, hey, what's going on about? And then you're always like, yeah, this is what I thought, or this is what I suspected. Or now you're actually coming clean with me and giving me the real scoop.
Because money is an asset too. It just is. And so if you spend it, that doesn't necessarily mean that that asset doesn't get counted. And so I that's what I like. I would have never thought of that, but those nooks and crannies that you look in are worth a lot of money.
It is. And, sometimes it's just me looking and I'm going, oh my God, these people are so boring. So sometimes there's really nothing there. But my job is to look, because again, I'm going to ask you to look and I expect you to actually look yourself, but I'm looking at it with a different lens. So when you're you're going to look for things that look unfamiliar to you. Like, we never went there. We didn't even go to that city. What are you talking about? We don't even have that gas station around. So those are the things that you're going to kind of go, that doesn't make any sense. I'm going to come out with a whole different scenario.
I mean, look, there's also Uber and Lyft receipts. Like you can figure out where your spouse was going, and were those actually business trips or was there something else going on? I mean, people spend a lot of money using those apps now. And, it's great because people aren't drinking and driving, but you can also tell, where they're going if you can get that information.
And you can get that information. And it's also the same thing. People are using Zelle, and they're using PayPal, and they're using all these other things. It's like, okay, great. Now give me all that payment history. Now I get access to those accounts. Well, wait a minute. It's not a bank statement. Well, guess what? You're putting money in the account. I need to know why. So I'm looking into those things. Anytime you're doing a withdrawal from one account to another and you don't provide me with that statement, I'm going to ask you for that statement. And again, those are things that I'm looking at. You're going to look at things that matter to you. And hopefully we can come up with a game plan based off of all of that.
I mean, some of those cash apps are just like social media. I mean, they'll put little emojis for what it was, and I mean, so there's Venmo too, and that's a huge one. And I remember printing out my Venmo receipts just because I use it for business and a little bit for personal, but I was more than happy to hand that over. But I had to it's they don't have it. They don't always have it set up so it's easy to read. There's not like an end statement that's, all divvied out for you. So with some of this research, there could be some man hours put in by you and whoever you can find to help you.
Absolutely. And that's why, again, I'm always going to ask you to look at it yourself, because you might go, Nicole, you're going down a rabbit hole. He only uses Venmo to pay our adult child's college tuition and for their books. Okay, great. Tell me that. I won't waste the time. I'll probably ask for the records, but then as soon as I confirm it, I don't need to look through 100 pages. All I'm looking for is a different name. But we need to know that in advance.
Absolutely. So we've covered a lot of assets today that are considered part of the divorce settlements. Did we miss anything?
No, I think we covered all of them, which is, everything's included. But the question is, okay, what can I use it for? So if you need to pay regular bills, nobody's telling you you can't pay your rent or your mortgage or your utilities. What it's saying is that you can't live this crazy, luxurious lifestyle while you're going through a divorce. It means you live. That's what it means. You need to buy first, last, and security. Okay, as long as we're seeing that you took out $5,000 and you paid Jane Smith, who happens to be your landlord now, $5,000. We can understand that. But we need to be able to see that paper trail. So it's really important that you're not trying to hide something under the covers over here. Look the other way, right? You want to make sure that it's really what it is. Here's the documentation. Here's the proof. Your Honor, I didn't do anything wrong. It's just that I needed it to survive. My car exploded on the highway. I needed to buy a new one. Okay, great. We understand things happen, but we need to be able to show that.
I love that quote that just talks about how you need to live your most boring life while you're going through a divorce. No, crazy relationships, no big moves, no big purchases, no big trips, all of that. And so when you see someone boring, that means they're doing the right thing. But most of the time, that's not the case.
And no social media posts, because that's another good one that people want to do. And guess what? I love those. Those are great for us.
I know. Like, hey, that was looked like a really nice vacation in Cabo that you took. How much of the marital funding did you spend? You are still married right now. You're just separated, but you are still married. So that's all gonna count.
Absolutely.
So let this be a lesson to you. We've gone over a lot of the assets and then what you should do, and we really appreciate you going through this with us, Nicole. It's always so informative and much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for watching. We will look forward to seeing you next week.